Welcome to all of you. And let me say that it's a pleasure to welcome you and to see you all present. I hope that the last people who were meant to join us have managed to join us. So today we will be talking about resilience in the face of climate change, and more specifically, the resilience of the horticulture sector and of the agri-food sector in general. For this session, I have the pleasure of having with me an expert from Côte d'Ivoire, Mr. Noel Zidago, who will introduce the topic. He will set the scene, so to speak, of the presentation. And after that, we will give the floor to Mr. Kelly Sindani from Kenya. He's representing IGA, East African Growers Association, and he will be presenting the point of view of an entrepreneur. Without further ado, I will give the floor to our two speakers. I will present the COLEAD support towards the end and tell you what can be done from a practical point of view. And at the end of the session, you will have some possibility to ask questions. So do not hesitate to write your questions in the chat room. I will collect the questions, and if time permits, we will try to answer them as we go. You can use the chat or the question and answer room. So Noel, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Laura. And good morning, everyone. My name is Noel Zidago. I'm an expert on climate change. It's a pleasure for me to be with you to share and have some exchanges about some of the practices regarding the fight against climate change. I will be talking mainly about three aspects: the causes and consequences of climate change, the contrasted strategies regarding mitigation and adaptation to climate change, and just climate justice, losses and damages. So, as you probably know, horticultural sector and agriculture in general are particularly sensitive to the changes induced by climate change. And we see that many horticultural companies, fruit and vegetable companies, are suffering from productivity, in terms of productivity, access to the biodiversity market, food safety, because of different phenomena associated with climate change. And so this has a considerable impact on your business. So it's difficult also to predict what the crops are going to be, the volumes. And so we have issues regarding water, regarding management of health and soils, and so also of with some major diseases. So that means that the whole value chain is more and more vulnerable for producers. And so especially for SMEs, which are becoming more and more vulnerable. Issues such as lack of resources, information about the climate is not always so clear to understand and to allow us to see what sort of adaptation needs to take place. But what we need to remember is that we should see this as an opportunity to build new systems, to have sustainable agriculture, sustainable agri-food sector, and to be competitive in this environment. So together with COLEAD, what we want to do is to integrate innovation, agroecology, for instance, intelligent, smart agriculture, sustainable agriculture, that should be integrated in the value chain so that we can be competitive and really achieve our goals as sustainable agricultural systems. In preparing this session, I looked at a number of documents, and there is a series of innovations that uh, enabled me to properly prepare. There was a recent study conducted by the International Trade Center, which approached 1,360 SMEs in sub-Saharan Africa. Well, 68% of these SMEs indicated that environmental risks were important to their business. And also, they reported that 48% of exporters were already investing in food prevention systems and other adaptation measures, compared to only 39% who are non-exporters. This sort of information really are an important indication regarding the dynamism of the sector. So amongst exporters of fruit and vegetables, 48% have already uh, have at heart to do something to fight these issues related to climate change. So SMEs which exports are really likely to invest in adaptation measures to climate change, which is perfectly understandable. And if you look at private standards such as Global Gap, Rainforest Alliance, and other requirements that you have to take into account when you want to practice sustainable agriculture. You also wanted to have activities which are resilient in the face of climate change. Climate change is a real issue because it impacts the value chain. And what you need to remember is that there are opportunities and innovations that exist. And you should take these into account in order, especially in your business model, in order to be able to achieve your goals, carry out your projects, and serve your company. So what is important is to equip yourself to deal with climate change. And to do this, it's important to consider the causes and consequences of climate change. Indeed, there are some people who are climate skeptical, as Laura indicated. But what you need to know is maybe to be aware of some key definitions, um, you know, with our smartphones and our connected smartwatches and on TV, we receive weather forecast every day. We know whether the weather is going to be hot, whether it's going to be raining or not. And so we know that the weather provides very short-term weather forecast. And so it's short-term forecast regarding temperature, humidity, precipitation, wind. When we talk about climate, on the other hand, we're talking about long-term average weather conditions in a region, in an area, and generally over a period of more than 30 years. But then when we speak of climate change, we actually refer to these weather conditions when they change over time in the medium and long term. And so we need to really consider these definitions when we speak of climate change. So today, climate change leads to some problems, such as the causes are greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, natural factors such as volcano eruptions, but also large factories and industries that emit a lot of CO2 in the air, and those are causes of climate change. So all of these changes, all of these causes have an impact and upset uh, the climate, such as provoking drought. You can have intense and extended periods of rain, of precipitation, rising temperatures, an extended dry season. Here in Côte d'Ivoire, for instance, some of our companies in the fruit and vegetable sector for mango, pineapple, or for tomatoes or other spices, this drought, which is protracted in time, will cause flowers not to bloom, to dry out. And so the production is going to be impacted. We will have less fruit. And so these companies are going to be heavily impacted because the cycle is changed. Either it is longer or shorter. And so this is something that our companies need to take into account because it's going to lead to a drop in the yield. And so orders placed by clients might not be honored. And then with the environment, um, in the sector, there are several companies. They need possibly to diversify because they're all competing for the same outlet for their products. And so this leads to uncertainty, which is, of course, another problem. So one of the consequences is that you have a problem in terms of manpower, young people and women, because of a drop in the yield of companies. Companies won't be able to hire young people, women, and these people will have to look for a job in other organizations, in other sectors, or elsewhere. There is also the problem of access to water. This is a real big concern because when you need to plan your harvest, and also when you uh, finally harvest your fruits and vegetables, you need to be able to uh, wash them before you package, store them, and export them. So all this is to be taken into account because if it is not compliant with health considerations, it might lead to uh, poverty. Well, the iceberg should have been probably at the bottom because it's the ultimate consequence of climate change. This is the increase of poverty. I'm interrupting because many participants are commenting in the chat about what they have observed. Mr. Zanamwe is talking about heat waves, floods, variable rainfalls. Mr. Sindani, who will be one of the speakers later, is also talking about unpredictability of conditions associated to drought, floods, pests, and other diseases. Mr. Traore is saying that what he sees in his area is that the rainfall period has become longer, which of course has an impact on production of sesame. And some people are also witnessing about cocoa production, and the fact that they had to work in the shadows. And so, and sometimes they work in nurseries to try to remedy the situation. So, as you said, Noel, this leads us to some innovation, turning to creative ways. And then Mr. Sikombe in Uganda said that in January and February and March, the weather was a lot hotter. And so they've lost half a hectare of avocado. So this year, we see that everyone suffered from climate change. Um, Thank you, Laura, for this feedback from the participants. And this actually confirms that people attending this session really know and really are aware about the situation and the problems that our SMEs are confronted with. So we talk a lot about strategies to fight against climate change. And actually, there are two different strategies which are contrasting, which are different. You can have mitigation and adaptation. And this is something to be taken into consideration within our organizations. So, on this table, what you see in the first column, you see on the left-hand side, you have the characteristics. In the second column, you have the mitigation strategies, which reduce the causes, because we were talking about greenhouse gas emissions, natural disasters, deforestation. Then in the last column, you have the impact of the causes and effects of climate change and how to adapt. So mitigation aims at reducing the cause of climate change. So reducing emissions of greenhouse gases uh, and increase carbon sequestration. So the idea would be to work upstream to try to reduce what causes these emissions of gas and to try to increase carbon sequestration. But when you are working on adaptation, so downstream, you try to reduce the vulnerability. So you work on the consequences at local level. And here you reduce resilience to the impact of climate change. So in this case, you focus more, either you focus on the source of the problem when you deal with mitigation, whereas when you deal with adaptation, you focus on the consequences. So if you act on the source, you might want to reduce the use of nitrogen fertilizers. You might want to use renewable energies, so reduce the effluence. And some of our companies have to manage enormous quantities of waste. In the mango export sector, they have enormous quantities of waste, whether at local level, production level, or in packaging sector. So there is a lot of waste. The waste needs to be upgraded to obtain biogas or a form of fertilizer that can be reused. So we will focus on energy efficiency. one of the participants was talking about the beneficial effects such as nurseries and creating shade in order to protect our crops and achieve carbon sequestration. So these are the things that we can do upstream. But what can we do downstream at local level? Well, producers organization need to be trained. They need to be able to use innovative measures to fight against drought, for instance. There are new modern irrigation techniques which uh, uh, enable you to avoid waste of water. Crop diversification is also a solution in case there is one crop which is particularly suffering, then you can diversify by focusing on another type of crop. We also need to have some warning systems regarding the weather. This also points to another issue because producers might not receive appropriate information regarding weather changes. And this would be actually of paramount importance because if you consider the fight against pest, well, uh, we are no longer allowed to use some phyto sanitary solutions as we used to in the past. So we need to diversify and this is an opportunity and you can receive accompaniment for that and support. There is also climate insurance which enables you to protect your crop when you do take uh, such climate insurance. Well, in the face of some climate shocks that might occur, well, the growers might have some protection, might enjoy some protection. So mitigation focuses on the causes of climate change, whereas adaptation is at local level, it's medium and short term, and it's a local consequences. Whenever you conduct strategies to fight against climate change, you need to take into consideration both aspects, mitigation as well as adaptation. It is not possible to only do adaptation without ever looking at what happens upstream. And so this type of table should help you remember that you need to work on two aspects of those strategies, mitigation and adaptation in the fight against climate change. Thank you very much. Before we change slide, I'd like to have some feedback by looking at what's happening in the chat. So I asked you, to bear witness to what has already happened in your area, in your region. So Noel was explaining the difference between mitigation and adaptation, and he was explaining that this challenge of climate change might also represent an opportunity to innovate. I see that Mr. Paul Sikombe is explaining that they have created a contact between growers and funding institutions or green finance institutions and microcredit institutions, which are offering um, uh, advantageous credit solutions to fight climate change. This is a particularly interesting topic, you know, I had to slow down Noel in the examples he was mentioning, but it's true that there are many possibilities, and the issue of funding is quite interesting. And maybe this would be the object of a separate webinar altogether, and access to finance. So you may go on, Noel. Sorry for interrupting you. Okay, we're going to now deal with another issue, which is climate justice and loss and damage. So all this is framed in a legal and political framework. So you have objectives, policies, and standards which are essential for guiding climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts. So this is really of paramount importance if you want to be able to mitigate and adapt to climate change. Today, there are international agreements such as UNFCCC and the Kyoto Protocol, which lay the foundation for global action. You know that we will start with COP. Well, it started with COP1. Now have already reached COP25, and COP oversees the implementation of global climate action. Parallel to that, we also have some private voluntary standards such as fair trade, organic agriculture, Rainforest Alliance, to encourage sustainable practices and compliance and actually reassure consumers. So nowadays, there is the EU regulation on deforestation, which guarantees that imported products are not associated to deforestation. This is the EUDR, European Union Regulation on Imported Deforestation. So it means that the producer's plot of land needs to be identified. We have polygons which enable you to know exactly the surface of this plot of land and to make sure that these areas are not close to protected areas. So compliance to the new EU regulation is of paramount importance. There is also the directive, so-called CS3D, which is on due diligence directive. It imposes transparency in the supply chain to reduce environmental impact. You need to communicate about your process regarding um, you know, your chain, your value chain, and your supply chain. And so the directive gives you some indication. So this directive on due diligence tells you also about sustainable practice and how you can contribute to mitigate climate change. So private standards will encourage responsible practice, will enable you to manage natural resources, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. They will enable you to respond to consumers' requirements and to regulations regarding sustainability. It will prompt integration of sustainable practice and reinforce resilience. So it's the whole agricultural system that we're talking about. It's raising awareness, it's training people, it's training producers also to these systems that need to be integrated right from the word go to whatever you do. It should be part of your ecosystem. So the services which nature provides should also be taken into account. How to fund climate remedies, how to fund innovative technologies, for instance, the field of irrigation. Drones can be used to provide information, precious information about the water irrigation system. So we need also to be able to communicate to show that we want to become resilient and produce all this food in our value chain. Thank you very much, Noel. We will now move on to Mr. Sindani's. I will stop sharing the screen for half a minute so that Mr. Sindani can prepare. Now, there are many exciting things which have been communicated in the chat by our participants. I believe Noel has mentioned important things above and beyond innovations. This is something, it's an effort that we need to conduct all together. We should not do this alone. And so this is an opportunity for small and medium-sized organizations to be an engine and to be inspiring about all these innovations. They can inspire the community. And it's an opportunity to include everyone, youth, women, and even elders who have the experience. We will come back to all of these aspects to explain how this is part and parcel of COLEAD's strategy. Mr. Alpheus is explaining in the chat room that he is focusing on research. They have had some trials with different techniques, and indeed there are different things that then can be tried out and discovered. It's important to be able to share this information and to circulate good practice so that everyone can contribute.
Next point of order today is to present to you the case of East African grower and how they've been innovating on climate change. So for this, I'm gonna leave the floor to Mr. Sedani. Just give me 2 minutes to finalize the presentation. And Mr. Sedani is a technical manager at East African Grower Fresh Product based in Kenya. And they have some very interesting stories to share with us. So, Mr. Sindani, the floor is yours. The presentation will be in the screen right now, or almost. Just my computer is a bit warm today. It's also quite hot in Belgium compared to what we are used to. So, Mr. Sindani, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon for those in East Africa like myself. My name is Kelly Sidani, and I work for East African Growers Fresh Produce Limited, a company that started way back in 1960, and as a local for local market, but it grew, and now we're exporting. Our operations, agricultural operations, of course, they include flowers, vegetables, and fruits. And the head office is situated at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport at the heart of Nairobi. Then in our growing base, we have 50% of our own farming. That's for vegetables and contract farming. And in our contract farming, we have large scale, small scale, and smallholder groups. And products here include broccoli, beans, snow peas, sugar snaps, baby corn, garden peas, baby vegetables, and of course herbs. Next, please. Uh, in our context here, we are looking at what the climate change has done. And that was good work from Noel. In fact, he mentions things to do with weather patterns, such as drought, floods, rising temperatures, and also pest and disease pressure because of climate change, and the impact it has had on our agricultural products and production or agricultural activity mainly has been a yield decline, especially when you have unpredictable weather patterns, economic losses when you have things like drought or floods, and also supply chain disruptions due to less products being available for export. Next, please. Now, how has the company responded, or how has it adapted to this climate change uh, practices, or what have we done? Agroecology, which has been mentioned already, efficient irrigation, and in particular, we have a project that we've done, and then varietal choices. In other words, you're looking at having known your weather patterns, then you can narrow down to those that are drought resistant or those ones, for example, that are affected by quality during the rainy seasons when you have a lot of fungal diseases, or during dry seasons when you have a lot of insects. So you look at the varieties that are maybe resistant, or they perform better during different weather patterns. Agroforestry, of course, growing of more trees, and the kind of support or approach that we were guided with, first of all, is collaboration with the COLEAD, and this is access to fit for the market and the tools. We've also gotten trainings, especially on climate change. And then on efficient irrigation, we've had funding for the avocado irrigation pilot project that included the precision irrigation, whereby you only irrigate when the avocado tree or orchard needs water. Next, please. So what are the results and benefits? We've had increase or improvement, one, in productivity. We have more production on our veggies and fruits. Of course, on quality, because like I've explained before, especially when you choose varieties wisely. Income, with improved productivity, you improve your income, and of course, it will create more employment opportunities. What about the market or environmental value added opportunities? Of course, environmentally, you have resilience. For market, of course, you secure your market in a way that you will always supply as per the orders. Next, please. So what is the advice to other stakeholders in the sector? First of all, we would have wished as a company to have known some of this technical knowledge earlier. It will have helped because earlier interventions always brings a change, maybe with others, people in the sector. And then the next thing is fostering partnerships among SMEs, financials, government agencies, and knowledge institutions, research institutions, and of course, COLEAD that has been part of the program. And what are the recommendations that we are giving to other organizations facing climate change? Of course, if they can do it like the way we did it earlier, the better. In other words, they need to look for more information on technical understanding of climate change. And then secondly, they need to foster partnerships and maybe look for financiers who are able to fund their projects so that they can have a positive impact when faced with climate change issues. Next. So what's the parting shot? Of course, agricultural activity, as presented earlier, And even as we've gone through, it involves use of natural resources. And of course, climate change brings about extreme weather events. Now, while the frequency of the and intensity of the extreme weather events like droughts, floods, and storms may stabilize or even decrease in the long term, if emissions are drastically reduced, the legacy of increased greenhouse gas in the atmosphere means that these events will continue to be severe for a long time. In other words, an intervention has to happen. So what are we going to do? In the meantime, our timely interventions can have a positive impact when it comes to climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sidani. May I ask you maybe if you could go just a bit further in terms of the avocado project, because I think it's a quite innovative irrigation system you've implemented. So would you be keen to provide some details to the audience?
Yes, this involves installation of techno-savvy gadgets on the tree trunk and also on the water irrigation system so that you can only irrigate when the tree needs water. And then, of course, the gadget also has the weather station. It incorporates the weather station that will pick up your weather patterns within a period of time. So it has helped us to have the data, and also the gadgets that are fitted on the tree trunk will help you to get to know whether the diameter of the tree is increasing or decreasing due to weather patterns, and at the same time, when the tree is water stressed. So this is real time in a way that it can only trigger the irrigation when the plant needs the water. And then of course, this is a pilot, and we also have a control, and we also look at what are the benefits, what's the production that is controlled versus where the project is. And also, it has helped us so much, especially to comply to standards such as Global Gap. We have the spring standard that requires for you to know amount of water you are using, and also the tools that you can use so that you can implement your irrigation regimes.
Okay, thank you very much. I see Mr. Alpheus from Nigeria in the chat, who's eager to collaborate to go further with this kind of solution at his level.
Thank you. He can get in touch with the local COLEAD representative. They have a good way on how they can install the project and guide you through the process.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that you have the same project manager in between the countries. So Wester is quite aware of what has been done at IGA and will be very pleased to transpose the success story to Nigeria.
Thank you.
And there's also Mr. Sigombe who's asking if he can visit to learn.
Yeah, it is. I can share my email address whereby we can communicate more. We can communicate more on email, and if a visit is planned, yes, we are ready to showcase what we are doing and how it has helped us.
Yeah, and I'll try to look after it, but I'm pretty sure there was some news about the solution because our research and innovation was quite involved in the project. So there can be also further information share from our side there. So Mr. Sikombe, if by any chance you pass by Kenya, Mr. Sidani is ready to welcome you. So thank you very much, Mr. Sidani.
Paul, you are welcome.
Oh, there's also Senegal and Mr. Diatta was interested in. Great. Okay, don't leave us, Mr. Sidani, because I'm going to go on how can COLEAD support you in this kind of solution and also on other kind of solution, how to adapt and how to mitigate. And I've seen also in your presentation that you use COLEAD tools. So maybe you'll be able to provide practical example to what I'm going to share with the rest of us today. So let me keep maybe a bit with the English, even though it's not as good as my French, but just for the balance between the presentation. How can COLEAD support you when it comes to climate change? Because COLEAD does quite a lot of things, and it's not always easy, I'd say, to understand how we can support. So that's where those webinars can be also interesting beyond having some further knowledge on the topic, some testimony, some sharings. It's also a way to better understand how you can benefit from all our services. So Noel presented to you two approach when it comes to climate change. You can either mitigate or you can adapt. Most of the time we do both. But there's also, I've seen a question, for example, will come later on, but I've seen a question, for example, how can we mitigate the flooding risk, for example? What are the mitigation strategies when it comes to flooding? And those kind of questions are indeed very, very important because I'd say beyond these two strategy, I'd say that there's three level or so of possibility. Either you can first absorb the shock, then you need to adapt to the short term, and to medium to long term, it's really about transforming your business. If we look at it from a practical point of view. And this is something you've done quite recently, not with the climate change, but with the COVID crisis. First, it hit us, no market available anymore, no human resources because we had to stay at home. Lots of things changes, so we needed first to absorb the shock. There were no more boat for container transport, no more touristic flights. So lots of things to absorb the shock there. Then the situation evolved slowly, but we adapted for a short term. We found solution to transform our product to sell rather to the local market. We reviewed how we were handling things in the pack house to ensure the well-being of our employees. There were lots of things to do to adapt, and then at some point we transformed. When it comes to COVID-19, maybe not all of you had to transform, but nevertheless, we all took lessons out of this experience, and we saw that we need to review the way we are working in case this is happening again. We don't find ourselves in a similar situation. So it could have been by diversifying our markets or the products we are selling. There were lots of ways to transform our businesses. I'd say at COLEAD level, maybe it's a very small way to adapt, but we moved from offices to home working more often, and we never came back to complete office working. That's a slight way to transform on the long term. And you had to do that at a much complex level, I'd say, than just this simple example. And COLEAD can really help you through all these stage. That's something we are looking for, and I think we proved during this COVID-19 crisis that we were there to support you, to absorb the shock. We did our best to provide you day-to-day information about containers, phthalates, what was coming in, what was coming out, find solution. We adapted on the short term, I'd say, with our training session to be able to provide you still support and enabling you still to develop and review your businesses. And at some point, we transform and we supported you into your transformation with all the way we did. So that's something we did for COVID-19, and we can still do, of course, with the climate change. But practically, because this is quite theoretical, and this is a very dense slide where we try to summarize everything we can do. So the first steps is to raise awareness, like with this session today. Even though I'm pretty sure most of the topics that were covered today you were aware of, but still by sharing information, by listening to some the testimony, from Mr. Sindani, for example, by listening Mr. Zidago, we still learned a lot of things. That's quite important. Then we work on testing new method, new product, new solution. This is what our research and innovation brokerage department does the best. So they look for solution to mitigate the impact. Oops, sorry, not what I wanted to do. They try to also find solution through field trials to adapt. To adapt to what's coming, because we need to be realistic now. It's not that we're going to stop the climate change, so we need to mitigate and we need to adapt. And they are also there to disseminate knowledge and to foster upscaling. We said it earlier with Noel. It's very important to organize demonstration, to publish results, to share the information. So that's something COLEAD is really eager to do. We are also there to help to avoid the unmanageable and to adapt, to manage. So there's to avoid and to manage the unavoidable with the technical and the training, technical assistance and the training activities. I can take, for example, a very practical case. Among the things that we can work on is when it comes to energy. How can we save up energy? How can we also use this climate change to produce our own energy and reduce our cost when it comes to energy, and produce less, reduce our carbon footprint by reducing our consumption of certain kind of energy like gas and petrol. So, for example, at COLEAD, what we can do is support you with diagnosis on what kind of energy you are using, how much. So do this diagnosis either through a self-assessment exercise, but also we can do specific diagnosis on that topic. Then there's training on this topic organized digitally quite often, at least once a year, especially when it comes to the energy topic, about how to evaluate your energy consumption. What do you have to look after? How can you save easily energy? After this training, we are offering post-training support, meaning that if you followed all this training, you can get a specific on-site coaching to help you to design an action plan and maybe even work on certain activities among this action plan. So that's just an example of things that we can do. We supported the setting up of innovative irrigation techniques. We can also support on elaborating a biodiversity management plan. There's really a lot of things possible at our level. And if you don't have time for the training, or maybe they're not organized when when you are available, know that there's always self-paced courses. We have thematic dedicated to the environment, where you'll find everything you need for climate change. So an introductive courses on climate change, where you're going to see basically what we've covered today, but going maybe a bit more deeper in it. And then you'll see how our self-paced courses can help you with this thematic. We are also planning, and this is just something new for COLEAD, and something that should come beginning of next year, but we are also planning to organize a specific massive open online course, or MOOC, so to enable all of you to participate to a training, to share insight, to discuss with peers, and be able to reinforce your skills when it comes to mitigate and adapt to the climate change. One last thing, no, not even one last thing, I'm only at the third point. It's about sharing and inspiring. We've said that it's important that you share all the innovative solution you came with, but COLEAD is also has also that responsibility, I'd say, to share, either through the COLEAD news, but also on the Agri-Innovator platform. You can there find other peer who you can exchange. And you can also follow the innovation session organized by our Network and Alliance department, where you're going to find other inspiring testimonies like the one of Mr. Sindani today. Finally, I'm saying finally, I want to reach the end of this presentation. I'm only at point four, and there's still the 5. So, facilitating financing, COLEAD, we done finance infrastructure. So when we are talking about setting up innovative irrigation system, for example, we cannot pay for the material, but we have all the access to finance department, who's there to help to build business plans and prepare dossier to submit to financial institution. And I think on that one, we can think of a webinar again on that climate change topic, but that will go through these access funds, and I'll be more than happy, Mr. Sigame, if you want to share for your example for during that session. But I'm pretty sure we will find also other interesting topic to share with you on that time. And the last thing that COLEAD is doing, and that's quite important, is the advocacy and the lobbying. So we are, for example, part of the Farm Miles initiative, where we are advocating and for the horticultural and the agri-food sector in a global way, to because one of the things we can hear quite a lot is like, you should eat local, because when you are eating, let's say, French bean coming from Kenya, they travel far to reach Europe. That's something we hear here in Europe, and this is something COLEAD is not okay with, because the way you are producing the French beans are not the way they are produced here, and so we cannot compare the product just based on the fact they were on how they were transported to the supermarket where we bought it. So we do quite a lot there to defend the right of the producers and make sure that they don't have to pay for the mistakes that other done previously. So I think that's also something quite important to keep in mind for today. And now I've reached the end of my presentation, and so this is the time for the question and answer. So we have about maximum 20 minutes to take your question and summarize the webinar today. So the floor is yours. If you have anything, I can keep the screen share at least up. You can either ask your question in the chat, you can ask it in the question and answer part, and you can also raise your hand to take the floor and ask your question openly. And if I may, first maybe Noel, if I can ask you, maybe some people have answered to I forgot her name, to Ajala before, but
what were the mitigation strategies that you would suggest when we talk about floods? After that, I will give the floor to Mr. Xavier, who has raised his hand. So Noel, first of all, could you answer that question about the mitigation strategies in case of floods? I think it was a question from Mr. and Mrs. Ajala. Mitigation strategy that could be developed when we talk about the risk of flooding. Is there any recommendation that you can formulate? It's a particularly relevant question because this is a real problem. You know, floodings are definitely one of the issues that need to be settled upstream. And it's not the grower who is responsible for it. So it should be part and parcel of a global strategy. But we need to understand what is happening upstream. So it happens in one area, it floods and destroys your crop, but it comes from elsewhere. So, of course, everything depends on where you're located, and you need to discuss this with the competent authorities. In terms of adaptation at local level, you ought to think of strategies, adaptation strategies, um, for instance, using some dams or small dam systems that will enable you to manage the water flow. This is something that we see in the case of banana, which are being exported. I know that in this sector, they have a whole water management system. So this is the type of thing that needs to be considered, you know, dams, construction of big dams or small dam systems that enable you to uh, divert the flow of water. You need to have a system, a mechanism that will enable you to manage the flow. Discuss this with your local competent authorities. And especially if the problem is a complex one upstream. Sometimes you cannot settle everything at your own level. Another possibility is to have other type of crops, you know, that will enable to manage infiltration of water, avoiding leaving the soil uncovered. So that sort of strategy is one of the adaptation strategies that can be developed. Also agroforestry, to have some sort of coverage, either through another crop or through forestation. So this is an integrated strategy that is a possibility, but you need to know the causes first in order to find the most appropriate solution, especially regarding water management. Thank you very much, Noelle.
So you're based in Ghana, I've seen.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm very grateful to COLEAD for opening our eyes of understanding. One of the trainings I've been held at Ghana, which I happen to be part of, that outgrower scheme, and all of us were much grateful for the opportunity. But my question here is, those of us that are real producers of vegetables and the tuber crop facing the drought, we are not much facing the flood like a drought and the acid rain. So how best, as we are now coming, resources are not at our hand like that, how best COLEAD can help us with their links so that we can stand to be able to use the irrigation system so that we can meet with the demands of the export market. Thanks.
Okay. Can you just clarify, because I'm not sure I got this part, you already have an irrigation system or you would like to implement an irrigation system?
Yes, we would like to implement. We would like to implement the irrigation system because we've gone through the south and they assess the amount of the water used, and we find difficult to be able to calculate those things, but being using the irrigation system and in order to be safe, because currently we are not having the insurance for our farms. So with irrigation system, we will be safe. So how best can we be able to implement the irrigation system in our farms? Tend to COLEAD help.
Okay, thank you very much for your question, and it comes at a good timing, I'd say. If you are already a partner beneficiaries of COLEAD, I need to check that very quickly, but my system is too slow, but I'm guessing you are if you are here today. But we have a digital training session that are going to be organized this semester on water management. So in September, we have a specific session that we launch about water management. So my first advice would be to register to that training session for your irrigation manager, so you can follow it. That way is going to be able to reinforce his skills on the topic. And this is as I have mentioned, this is a trainings that is going to lead to a post-training support. So if the person who register follow the whole session and submit kind of a homework at the end, so there's going to be all the instruction during the training, then you'll get a specific support there for you to be able to work on the specific challenges you are facing now and to be able to implement that at your level. What has been learned during the training and transfer the skills from the training to your organization. So that would be the first way COLEAD can support you. Then I'd say that will depend maybe a bit of the development project you have with us, but we could look here if we can go with some specific action tailor-made activities specially designed for your organization. I'm guessing for Ghana, you may have seen recently, Delano maybe came in Ghana end of June, so maybe you've met him.
Yes, I've made them. I've made them.
Okay, so you are already in touch with him because it would be the person with Agnes also to be able to tell you exactly for your organization, this is what we can do today. So here I'm giving you the collective support that we can provide. And he can also share with you the link of this training session, for example. So
Thanks very
does
much.
that answer your question? Okay, then I'm going to offer the floor to Mr. Alfeo, who has raised his hand from Nigeria. If I recall, you're the person who's taking care of cocoa.
Thank you, Lara. I'm
Pleasure.
Alfeo. Yes, sir. I work on cocoa and do a lot of research in the field of horticulture. I'm an horticulturist. My PhD research was on cocoa, mitigating the effects of climate change by increasing the shade density for establishment, which is the major problem we used to have in establishing cocoa. So my question is there any way we could supply some information to is there any linkage through which individual experts could supply information by research informations to COLEAD on what has been done in some areas of mitigating this effect of climate change, or also if there could, because there are a lot of things that can be done in various way to mitigate the effect of climate change. If there is any research department that we can work with as experts to really research into most of this and supply the direct information to COLEAD for future use or documentation. Thank you.
Yeah, and indeed, your question has been also raised, I think, by Mr. Zanamwe on the question and answer area where he was asking how he can get in touch with the research assistants there. So in terms of communicating what has been done, I'd say register to the newsletter. That's the best way to be informed of everything we are sharing there. Everything that we are, every solution we've been developing. Of course, I understand there that this once it's developed, we are communicating about it, but not before. So maybe you would like to know what we are indeed working on when it comes to research and innovation. I'll take note of this one, see if I can share also with the email, the follow-up email, some key information already there. And I also note the interest on the topic when it comes to climate change. So I was saying that we are forcing a second webinar, and maybe we should emphasize that part in this second webinar, because there's quite a lot of things that are indeed done by our research and innovation department, and I'm not the best person to present all of them. So yeah, I note your interest there, and we will do our best to come on the follow-up email with some further insight. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have lots of questions also in the chat. Maybe one here for Noel again. And Noel, you can tell me if it's not your area of expertise, Noel.
So the questions we have in the chat is how can farmers obtain some carbon credit restitutions because Africa is less industrialized. It contributes, therefore, less to pollution of the air. And I suppose that it emits less carbon. So this is an issue which has to do with climate justice. So would you have an answer to give to this question? Yes, indeed. Farmers may benefit from carbon credit, and the future legislation regulation, which is being put in place in sub-Saharan states, and in particular in Côte d'Ivoire, I know that they're doing something in order to structure all of the actions which are implemented by producers. There are also local initiatives to support uh, producers so that they will be able to be entitled to a sort of premium whenever they are conducting actions to fight against climate change. One of these main actions that has been observed is when producers accept to set up uh, shading devices in their farms. And of course, there is a follow-up. You know, they need to plant some typical trees. And whenever there is a shock, they will be entitled to a compensation because these type of measures contributes to carbon sequestration. It also contributes to biomass in the soil, and so it also contributes to reducing greenhouse gases. And so all of these emissions, all of these initiatives are accessible. It has, thanks to this regulation, there will be some structures brought to this type of help, which producers are entitled to. Thank you, Noel. I'm going to give the floor to Frédéric, who might want to supplement what has been said. Apparently, okay, Frédéric, you should be able to take the floor. Frédéric Leroy Abalo. So Frédéric is a colleague from technical assistance who's Hello, it's not Frédéric, it's me speaking. Oh, okay, but it was your Frédéric's name that was appearing on the list. Whatever. I wanted to confirm what Noel just said, namely that for producers to have access to carbon credit, there are two mechanisms. It is the regulated carbon market and the other market, the volunteer one. The regulated one is a lot stricter because you need to comply with certain procedures, provide certain type of information. But this is to say that producers develop some projects, they can obtain some funding, and there is a retribution to the beneficiaries, local players. Most of the time, these are the producers. And for the volunteer carbon market, producers can have their project certified and they can receive some retribution once they have this accreditation. Accreditation is given by entities appointed by the states. So there are certification organizations which are appointed according to the regulation of the country. So approach the Ministry of Agriculture or Ministry of Environment of your country to find out about these accreditation entities, because you can then get support from one of these experts to have your project implemented and certified and accredited so that you can sell your carbon credits on the market. The process is a bit lengthy, and so it might be somewhat discouraging for individual or smaller associations, but it is a possibility, and that's why it's best to get the help, the support of an expert. I just wanted to say this. Well, thank you very much for this additional information. I'm checking the chat room to see whether there are other messages. We have some questions that have not been answered regarding climate insurance, says someone. So Ajala, I don't know whether it's Mr. or Mrs. Ajala. If you want to, I could give you the floor, but in the meantime, I see that Christine Chizana has asked for the floor. I give her the microphone and time is running out. So Christine, you have the floor. We've lost Christine, so I'm giving the floor to Ajala.
Thank you very much. The unanswered questions actually have to do with the climate insurance. How do we get to know about the climate insurance? Because in this part of the continent, we don't have anything like that in Nigeria, for example. Someone also asked about the increase in pest and fungal crop diseases. I can tell you and confirm that in Nigeria, we had a serious infestation of Tuta absoluta, which affected the tomatoes, the harvest of tomatoes. We also had the infestation of blight, which affected ginger. And we have one of the best species of ginger in the world in Kaduna. Now, these are issues that we need to address strictly. Where are these pests migrating from? Why are they, in volumes and affecting harvest? And unfortunately, some of the pesticides being used, these pests are resistant to them. So there's a need for new innovations in organic biopesticides, organic fungicides, and we are currently working on neem oil. There's a neem oil-based organic pesticides that we're trying to make sure that we apply and see the effect it has on these plants. Finally, I think one of the mitigation things we need to do is to encourage soilless and vertical urban farming. China is the highest polluter of greenhouse gases, but at the same time, they are in between breaking even into food security. So how are they doing it? So we need to encourage soilless, vertical, and urban farming and moving forward. Thank you very much. And moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your intervention. When it comes to biopesticide, this is a high priority for our research and innovation department. So there, COLEAD is working quite a lot on that to get new products available on the market, new homologated product also. So they are recognized also for export. And yeah, there were lots of questions, so I think we'll go at least on the insurance one. If I can leave the floor to Noël.
So Noël, what type of insurance systems exist? What can you say about that? Thank you, Laura. As a matter of fact, this is a rather recent topic, and it's something which is often used in Kenya, but in my country, Côte d'Ivoire, the sector in which it was used, it was mainly in the coffee cocoa sector. There is one insurance called in DCL, index insurance, which is defining certain criteria for production. In other words, the producer will insure his crop, and whenever there is a climate shock, such as drought, for instance, he would be entitled to this type of insurance called index insurance. So, for instance, you also have insurance based on yield. In this case, the producer will be receiving a settlement if the yield, if the actual yield is not up to what had been initially calculated based on historical yield. So this is a theme which is gaining a lot more interest today because it could help farmers manage the situation whenever there is a shock. And in terms of agricultural funding, these elements also draw the interest of banks because banks also need to be able to assess the agricultural risk, and they accompany the support producers and companies by giving them access to funding. So agricultural insurance is definitely an opportunity, and it is a sector that could be of great interest. But I must confess that for as we speak, it is really a very recent solution, no more than 5 years. And there are many parameters that have to be taken into account in order to in order to really be able to benefit from it. So in terms of experience, it is important to take into account the parameters that are required for this to work. Thank you very much, Noel. Mr. Jala, Mr. Ajala, I'm well aware that we have not answered all of the questions. Unfortunately, time is running out and we are coming to the end of this webinar. I know it's always frustrating to finish a session without having been able to answer all of the questions. On the other hand, this really shows that the subject is of interest and that there is a need to continue to have exchanges around this topic. What I can already suggest, and I'm going to send this information in the chat because I can see that there are several people who say they're interested in having more information on carbon credit for avocado producers. So because there are many questions that have been left without answers, please go back to the support mailbox at COLEAD.link and if possible, specify your question again, the name of your organization and country, so that we can steer you towards the right person who will be able to help you answer your questions in a very practical way. So COLEAD wishes to support you regarding issues related to resilience to climate change. I wish to thank our speakers thank you very much to Noel Zidago and Kelly Sidani for sharing their knowledge. Thank you also to our interpreters, Sylvia and Joseph, who assisted us today for this session. And I hope they were able to help you follow the discussions in French and in English according to your language of preference. Thanks again to all of you for attending, for your interest, whether you are an SME, a consultant, working for research, for training institutions or any other organization. It's always a pleasure to have an opportunity to exchange with you on such important topics, which are dear to the heart of those who work in the horticulture sector. We hope to meet you again for a second webinar in a few months from now, and maybe we'll be able to deal with other topics or develop further issues such as insurance, access to funding. We want to know more about the projects developed by our Research and Innovation Department.